Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
All right, so the latest chapter in the microphone saga has finally come to a close. You can probably see now I've got a new mic in front of me. This is the first time using it, so again, crossing my fingers that I've set it up correctly, and just had a bit of a quick learning curve this morning. But I've been impressed with what I've seen so far. The Apogee Hypermic microphone, not an ad. It's just something I went out and bought for my research, and it's already got a hell of a lot more features than what the old Rode Podcaster I had, and it's probably about a quarter of the weight, which is going to make it easy for travel podcasting as well if we ever need to.
Well, Ben, all I can say is that from this side of the screen, it looks great.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on to X/Twitter. I'm going to continue to refer to it as Twitter for the time being, if just to poke the bear there. But obviously there was this news story that came out that Elon's looking at introducing a $1 charge for new users to the platform, even to do basic features. So basically, just to access the platform at all, you're going to have to be charged for $1. Now, I'll also point out that this is the start, so it might be for new users now. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be for everyone in short order, because he's looking for ways to make money off the platform. And this, look, he can do whatever he likes. He runs the thing. But from my perspective, I've been contemplating whether to keep using our account going forward. Controversial, I know, but the reality is that in doing deep dives into the stats of our podcast, the audio and the video, it's clear that less than 2% of all the views are coming from Twitter or /X. And this, like, if I now have to, like, eventually, like, if he starts rolling it out to any user that's on the platform, yes, okay, it's $1, so that's not, but it's the principle of the thing. It puts it behind a paywall, and now I'm like, well, okay, well, now you're going to push me off the platform now, because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting move, and it's one that I'm sure, must have, really part of this business plan must have been sort of created right back at the start when he first came in. And so many things come with monetization as well. So, I mean, Elon's very good, in a business sense. So he'll be prepared to grow or indeed shrink X to whatever level is sustainable as per the income. And I'm sure that's his grander plan. So if he halves the number of users on Twitter, but it becomes financially sustainable, in his mind, I'm sure he will have achieved it. Any investors, will say, yeah, he's achieved it, even if ultimately he decreases the notional value of Twitter in the process. He'll have a functioning business that sustains itself. So maybe that's part of the program. But I think for ordinary users, if I can use that term, and I started off on Twitter back in 2007, but haven't been there for probably a decade. Once you bring payment onto these platforms, once you tweak algorithms on these platforms, once you create business models on these platforms, it's no longer a platform that's really free to use. And I mean that in a monetary sense, but also in terms of a choice. You don't get choice. You don't get any of those things. So these are big changes, and these will ultimately decide what Twitter's like in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there. I personally have question marks over his business acumen anyway, because he seems to have done a pretty good job of driving advertisers away just with some of his behavior on the platform. And because I'm a contrarian to a lot of points of view here, I kind of wonder, I think there's a myth around his supposed genius in terms of how good he is at these things. And look, we'll see what happens. Like, I don't think it's going to self-combust or disappear or whatever, and it may turn into something completely different, which I'm sure is what he's trying to do. This idea of the one app that does everything. Whether or not he can do that is another thing. But I think
whether or not anyone wants to pay for that one app that does it.
Absolutely. And I don't know if I mean, like a classic example of an app that does that is WeChat, but that was developed, obviously being a Chinese app. It's an entirely different environment where there's an encouragement to do everything in the app when you're in China, but I don't know if that correlates over to to Twitter in that same aspect. But regardless, it depends on a whole lot of factors. I just think that this move will ultimately deter a whole bunch of users from using the platform because it's a barrier to entry, even if it's like a psychological in principle thing, because $1 is not a lot. But when you consider what you're getting, taking that extra step over that barrier might be a little bit too much for most people.
Oh, I completely agree. And, I think it's interesting what you say about the one app for everything. We saw that 10 years ago at peak Facebook. And obviously the technologies weren't as advanced and, things weren't quite as monetized as they were. But, back in 2014 or 2015, if you weren't on Facebook, you had a problem because everyone else was. Now there's loads of choices to basically connect with people, and Twitter's just one of them now. And it was always slightly different in terms of being a social platform anyway. Once you take away that free access, that ability to come and go, and the ability to choose from your perspective what you see, instead you start getting told what you're going to see. Yeah, I'm not sure that I'd want to pay for that service.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. Now, this story caught my eye. Jon Stewart he had a show on Apple TV Plus called The Problem with Jon Stewart, and I'd call it the Daily Show light. It's kind of like a version of the program where he didn't have to put in as much effort, which I appreciate. Like, the Daily Show would have been quite the grind back in the day, and producing a show like that, especially if you had to do it every single day is hard. So, I enjoyed it. He had he's always fun value to when he's doing his shtick and whatnot. But the thing that why I wanted to sort of talk about it was that and although it's kind of hush hush and we don't really know what caused the end of it because it's the old creative differences thing, but it would seem that that potentially he was going to go and talk about topics that Apple found too sensitive. Which is a bit unfortunate, really, because that kind of I can see it because Apple quietly is very closely curating what goes on Apple TV Plus, probably more so than a whole bunch of other streamers. But it's a bit sad, really, that they lured him out of retirement effectively to do this kind of political show, and then if they're worried about how it might come across in China, or because he might have critical views of certain technologies because, Apple's in there, like AI or whatever. Yeah. It's the classic towing the corporate line problem. And, well, there you go. There's a whole episode for him right there. The problem right there. Right there. So, and it's just like, it's unfortunate that that kind of censoring, in a sense, comes into play.
Yeah, look, it's ironic, isn't it? But it's not something that hasn't happened many times before, where a network or a platform will lure a specific personality, whether it's a journalist or just an influencer, to their platform with promises. This is going to be great. You have creative freedom. You can do what you like. I want hard-hitting journalism. And then, of course, once they get there, the tune changes, and this really, unfortunately, it really would be creative differences. Although I had to have a chuckle at this myself because Apple's behaviour in effectively not wanting to talk about AI or Chinese situations, it just made me think of Steve Jobs by committee. Faceless people shutting stuff down. But without any expletives or like reality distortion nets. Just we don't talk about that at Apple. And if anyone has had dealings with Apple, which I have had in the past, that's the sort of language they use. But we don't talk about that at Apple. And that's it. End of story. So I can imagine, you'd pitch the content for the show, and that would just be the response. No discussion. We just don't talk about that at Apple.
Yeah, well, if anything, at least I guess it's good that Jon Stewart stuck to his guns then. If he said, well, all right, if I can't talk about this, then we're not doing it. See you later. So that was kind of good for him, I guess.
This is always the problem when salespeople get involved. So, who knows what exactly happened, but I would say that this is probably the tip of the iceberg. There's probably a whole lot of other interesting stuff that he wanted to do, but just made the people in the sales teams nervous.
Absolutely. All right, and this last story is kind of a feel-good if you're a snoozer, through your sleep. That obviously it's not for everyone, but it would seem that, this idea that there's negative effects if you, hit the snooze button and get another 20 or 30 minutes before you wake up, that for some people it's perfectly fine, and they actually do better at it. They get up during the day and get a bit more out of it. So I can't specifically say for myself that I'm this type of person, because I'm a morning person. It's like when I wake up, I'm ready to work, so I'm good to go. But I think it's what I like about this story is just this idea that we're all different, and we don't this whole like broad sweeping generalization of how much sleep you should get, how you should sleep, whatever. I was thinking of that topic we did a couple of months ago where, back in, before the industrial era, we we're probably doing 4 hours and then getting up and then doing another 4 hours. And that might have been more of the norm. So maybe people should just concentrate on, if I'm feeling refreshed in the morning, then it's probably working. If I'm not, then maybe I need to look at how my sleep's going.
Yeah, it's funny. I've got a sleep app now I've been using for 12 years, and we sleep in about 45-minute waves between deep sleep and light sleep. So that continues right into the morning, into times when you're likely to wake up. My app's got a 30-minute window, and it effectively listens for when you're in a light sleep phase. So that might be at the start of the 30 minutes or at the end of the 30 minutes of that particular cycle, and it will wake you gently at the point that you're coming out of deep sleep naturally. So I never have to snooze. I think when you have a hard alarm, snoozing is right, because you're going back for another 5, 10, 15 minutes to try to find that bit where you're coming out of sleep. And that's traditionally where you don't hit snooze again and you do get up. But it's funny, isn't it? And I totally agree. If sleeping's working for you and you're feeling good, then you're doing the right things. You don't have to do what other people do.
Absolutely. It's not always about getting 8 hours every night. Let's put it that way. All right, Steve, I might wrap it up there. So, my audio meters on this new microphone seem to be working, so I'm kind of keen to see how this actually turned out. Then we'll see. We'll know next week once I upload whether or not I had to do some serious adjustments to it, or whether it just came out just nice.
Well, if nothing else, it looks great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the look. Absolutely. All right, so don't forget to check out our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, and watch us on any and all of your devices, and we greatly appreciate your visits to our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.